welcome back. And in this video, I'll be giving you some information about spikes and associated user stories. So, there's one question for teams who work with iterations and with user stories and spikes. So, there's a question for you over here. So, can spikes and its associated user stories be included within the same iteration? So now we deal with different iterations in the agile methodology and framework. So if you're dealing with it, have you ever thought about this particular aspect of adding spikes and its associated user stories to the same iteration? Okay. So now there's no hard and fast rule of whether it should be added, it should not be added, nothing as such. But a question to keep in mind or to ponder on is when you try to include spikes and its associated user stories within the same iteration, kind of think what would be the probability of the team successfully delivering value at the end of the iteration. And here is why. So let's say you have a spike along with its associated user stories. For example, the team has to there's an e commerce website, and the team has to um, work on the feature of internet banking. Okay, so the team has no idea of what internet banking is, so this is kind of a complex epic, and I've taken a shot on that so you can kind of view that video also. So it's a complex epic. You cannot actually decide on what could be the potential user stories, and if at all you have broken it down into user stories, you have one spike and you have these associated user stories. Now, the team doesn't have a clear idea of how internet banking works. So you have this spike along with its associated user stories. And you kind of plan to take these two things, this spike along with the associated user stories in one iteration. So what happens? Maybe kind of think of what could possibly happen when you do this. So some things that can happen is that one is the spike is a spike. Still, there is not much clarity on whether the spike is feasible or not. And the spike is one thing that the team can estimate. Okay, that's one thing that they know. Okay, this is the spike, and the acceptance criteria, they need to know how internet banking works, and then what are the platforms and providers, the impacts in the current system, the security threats, and different complexities. So they know what needs to be done, and they can estimate it. But when you look at the associated user stories, it's totally blank, or rather it would be fuzzy, because you won't be able to actually estimate the user story well, because it depends on this spike. There'll be a lot of things that you would be unsure of, a lot of uncertainties. Okay, so the team would actually be estimating spikes better than user stories. And sometimes when this happens, this creates a fuzzy iteration, because you kind of don't know whether this iteration is going to be successful or not. You don't know whether the spike is going to be feasible. And if it's not feasible, then all the user stories are kind of blocked. You cannot deliver value. So the entire iteration becomes very fuzzy and uncertain. So the tip here is include a spike in one iteration and its associated user stories in the subsequent iterations. So by this, the team has time in order to spike on that particular feature, and then they would be able to analyze it and then see whether the different other stories can be taken into consideration for the next iteration. So there's a lot of time that they have, and once the team is clear on spikes, the stories also would be better for estimating. So the benefits is, one is the team becomes more confident to move ahead with development once they have spiked on a feature. There would be less blockers also. So if you see, during this analysis, they kind of do an intensive spiking on features, which avoids any potential blockers that can arise. Okay, so the probability is very lesser when compared to spikes and user stories together. And also the stories can be estimated better. So now, since you know what the spike is, teams are, having a clearer idea, they know what needs to be done, they would be able to estimate stories better. And the last one is the iteration has high probability of value delivery. So when teams are very confident, they know what needs to be done, everything else goes on smoothly. They're able to develop the feature, and then once the feature is developed, the value, you're able to deliver value at the end of the iteration. So that's one tip when you work with spikes and associated user stories. So always try to kind of keep them in different iterations, but sometimes scenarios might not permit you to kind of put them into separate iterations. But the thing that you need to keep in mind is always try as max to keep them in separate iterations. So I hope this was a little informative to you. So if you found this helpful, please do give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe to this channel, and also do share your feedbacks. Thank you.